I'm holding in my hand a request for proposals that the Boston Police Department put out in October 2016. This seeks bids for a $1.4 million social media spying software program. And some of the stuff in here is really wild. The BPD want a software program that will enable them to create profiles, dossiers of social media users across platforms. So Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Snapchat, anything you can imagine. This would scrape details about you from all of those different sites and put them in one dossier that can be exported and sent around, possibly to the FBI, to DHS. It has all sorts of other robust capabilities, maps people's associations. We're worried, frankly, that it's going to be used to track people for their political speech. Maybe people who don't like what the Trump administration is going to be doing. Maybe people who have a problem with U.S. wars abroad. So if you have some concerns about this, please get in touch with your city council member and with the mayor and urge them to drop this costly surveillance boondoggle. Thank you.
They say to catch a criminal, you have to think like a criminal. And that's exactly what Boston police are trying to do with a controversial new tool the department wants to add to its crime-fighting arsenal: social media monitoring software. The technology would scan platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, looking for potential threats to the public or other criminal activity. To some, the idea is a logical step in how police should evolve in a digital age. To others, this is a potential serious invasion of privacy and cause for great concern. Commissioner Bill Evans tried to calm those fears when he joined us last week on Boston Public Radio.
Stuff that's available to the public, that people put out there, that other people have access to. So we aren't invading anyone's right to privacy here, because there's no expectation of privacy if you put it out there. We're not going to do anything different with this. All this is technology that helps speed up the process. It makes it more efficient.
This afternoon, the Boston City Council held a hearing on the proposal, which will be paid for in part with a federal Homeland Security grant. Joining me to talk more about all this are Kate Crockford. Kate is director of the Technology for Liberty program at the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Kate, it's good to see you again. And former Watertown Police Chief Ed DeVoe, good to see you as well. Why are you so upset? Isn't the police commissioner right? Essentially, this is just a more efficient way to do what they could do by just looking at someone's page with the human eye. It's just a more efficient method, isn't it?
Well, that's actually part of the problem. So the analogy that Commissioner Evans used, I don't personally like. What is, I think, more appropriate is thinking about this analogy. A Boston police officer could sit outside your home, Jim, and take photographs of everyone who goes in and everyone who goes out and make detailed notes about what they were wearing, their license plate number, etc., and put that in a centralized dossier that includes the records of all of your family members, similar records, and all of your professional contacts and all of your friends. And maybe that information is shared with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. That would actually be legal under current statutes and constitutional precedent, because you're in public, right? Unless you have a fence, the police can sit in front of your street and take those notes and take those photographs.
So you're saying they can do it, they just shouldn't do it?
Well, so there are a couple, it's a complicated issue. So yes, they can do it, right? Technology changes things. So whereas in the olden days, or even with the example I just gave, cops couldn't actually do that to everybody in Boston, right? There aren't enough cops. And if they did do it to even one person, and that person wasn't suspected of a serious crime, people like you and I imagine, would think that that was wrong.
But your problem, Kate, just so I understand, is not even with the software. Your problem is with the behavior to begin with. You don't want them doing it on an individual basis. You don't want them doing it on a collective basis with the software. Is that not a correct statement?
No. What I'm trying to say is that if law enforcement suspects someone of criminal activity, they can certainly look at their Twitter page, their Facebook page, and try to find out if there's evidence there to help them make an arrest to get someone who
You're worried there's
potentially
going to be a wider
dangerous.
dragnet.
Well, that's clearly what the software facilitates.
Well,
I mean, that's the purpose of it.
Isn't that a legitimate concern? I don't want them, if I'm in a particular geographical area, which is how some of this software works, I don't want them capturing what I'm writing to somebody else.
They're not going to do that.
Why not?
They're not going to look at everybody. There's not enough time. There's not enough time to sit at somebody's house that like she explained. We have to do police work. So it's important to use the GEO when something happens. When Orlando happened, it was very important for the Orlando Police Department to understand who was at that nightclub, who was witnesses, who could have been a suspect, and that's how these software can be used.
But that was after the fact.
After the fact, yeah. So a lot of it is going to be putting things back together. The shooting in Boston where the Wentworth police officer was involved. One person was arrested, 3 more on the run. You can go back in that.
Something where you were involved. How about the Boston Marathon?
Right.
I mean, would you argue one of the reasons they were able to catch one Tsarnaev brother and kill another was because there were cameras out on the street. They captured thousands and thousands and thousands of people. The only thing they did was go watch a marathon. Would you object to that too?
No.
Why is that any different than what you just described a minute ago, where there's innocent activity that's captured and there happen to be a couple of bad behaviors, but they are just in the larger crowd?
So one of the main issues here is government centralization of information, right? And one issue about what happened at the marathon is that those were not centralized government cameras. Those were cameras from, hotels and restaurants.
What if they were?
That would be a problem. We shouldn't live in a surveillance state where the government can monitor everywhere everyone goes from camera to camera.
A private
walking down the
camera
street.
on a building is okay, even if the government seizes it, but it's not okay if it's a government camera.
What I'm saying is that there's a distinction between those two things, Jim. Having cameras in individual establishments where, for example, if there's a crime, law enforcement can go and look at those cameras to see who was there. That's a totally different thing than a networked surveillance camera system that any law enforcement official, maybe even in D.C., under Trump's FBI or DHS, can get access to track people as they move throughout the city. Those are different things.
Commissioner Evans, who I know you know quite well, say a minute ago, we're not going to do the kinds of things that people like Kate are concerned about. But there are other departments. I was just reading today, the Oregon Department of Justice, they use something called digital stakeout. And they're monitoring hashtags, which in the abstract sounds fine, until you read one of the hashtags is Black Lives Matter. If you're concerned about the shooting of young black men in this country by some of your fellow officers, you're going to be caught up in this sweep that's being done out there. So even if Boston is to be trusted, the whole concept is not to be trusted, is it?
Well, I think there's the potential of any system there's chances for abuse. I think with checks and balances, and Boston will do it right, they'll be transparent. When you run the license plate that we were talking about earlier, that gets tracked and we know exactly who ran that plate. So if there's ever concern, so if somebody runs Black Lives Matter hashtag, you're going to know what department did it, what individual did it.
But doesn't that bother you that they're doing it to begin with?
Yeah, but I think that's why you have commanders that are going to make sure it doesn't happen. You run the checks and balances.
I know you had a city council. It seems to me that this is, first of all, you have no problem with body cameras, right? Body cameras, the Civil Liberties Union loves. I could get
depending on the policy.
But wait a second, but I could get caught up. You have a cop with a body camera on. I could be doing something innocently, and I could be caught up in that image as well. Isn't the issue really not the underlying surveillance, which I have problems with, I must say, but what the regulations and rules are. Just like the commissioner, I know some of the groups, including the Civil Liberties Union, around body cameras, want to know about storage, collection.
That's right.
Well, isn't that the exact same kind of issue?
Sort of, but it's sort of apples and oranges. I mean, what
Why?
we're dealing with here with this social media surveillance system is, first of all, a $1.4 million contract that they're potentially going to buy, right? And this just blows out of the water things that other cities have done. So I'm a little bit confused even why BPD feels like it needs to spend so much money and what exactly it's going to buy. For example, Los Angeles has spent about $70,000 over a period of 3 years on software.
So what do you suspect, despite what Commissioner Evans said, they plan on doing something more nefarious than he's saying?
I honestly don't know. I'm simply saying that it's a really large sum of taxpayer dollars to be spending on a program like this. And I would also just push back a little bit on what you said, Chief, which is that the BPD can be trusted with this kind of program. A few years ago, my office at the ACLU put out a report based on Boston police documents showing that officials at the Boston Police Department were spying on Veterans for Peace, Code Pink.
That was before Marty Walsh and before Commissioner Evans.
But the same people who run the BRIC are running the BRIC now.
No,
and the
but
policies,
it was before the two leaders who were in charge of the city
That may
and the
be true,
police
but
department.
the policies have not changed to our knowledge. So the same exact policies that enabled that kind of monitoring of First Amendment protected speech. And this was people who were designated as extremists in these intelligence files that may have been shared with the FBI. I mean, I think Mayor Walsh is a nice guy too, and I don't, have any problem.
It has nothing to do with being a nice guy. He just hasn't done what that report accused his predecessor.
Certainly, my point though is that the police department's policies remain the same.
One last thing, we only have a couple of seconds left. One of the things Kate didn't mention, but I'm sure would have gotten to, the chilling effect of this thing. I will think twice before I say something that I might not otherwise say. I don't plan to do anything bad to anybody, but I'm going to think twice about expressing myself on Facebook or Twitter for fear that something that I mean in jest or a hashtag I might put up. Are you not concerned about my privacy rights?
I'm not. I think you're holding up a sign. It's like you're there and you put it out for everybody to see. It's not anything spying or anything else like that. If there was a protest going on and the Boston police or a major city could monitor that, and you can find out that most of the people are there for the right reasons, but there's a plan with social media going back and forth, and they're going to go down and try to shut 93 off, that's a public safety issue. Everybody wants this. This is going to work for a lot of different people. I know there's a lot of questions on both sides of it, but I think you jump in and you support the police department because they're doing a lot of things right.
We got to hold it there. Kate, nice to see you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much, Jim.
Chief, pleasure.
Thank you.
Good to see
Appreciate
you.
it.
Social media helps police spy on activists. Update November 29, 2016. Thanks to joint efforts of ACLU of California, Center for Media Justice, and Color of Change, Twitter said no, loud and clear, to surveillance. We're still waiting for Facebook and Instagram to send a strong message too. Sign today to keep up the pressure. Police are using social media surveillance companies' analytics and search capabilities to monitor activists protesting police brutality. The ACLU of California broke the news that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram had data deals with Geophidia, a social media company that characterized activist groups and unions as overt threats and marketed its tool to monitor protests. In an important first step, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter cut off Geophidia. But Geophidia is just a piece of the puzzle. Many companies sell social media surveillance tools to police. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram need to take additional steps to safeguard users against police surveillance. Social media is a driver for activism, political conversation, and the fight for human rights. We need to make sure it continues to be a safe forum for millions to connect about the most important issues in our lives, and can't be used as funnels for a surveillance database. Tell Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to slam shut surveillance side doors and make sure their data can't be used for discriminatory surveillance.